Part 1, Chapter 9 of The Idiot. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Eva M. Martin. Part 1, Chapter 9. Silence immediately fell on the room. All looked at the prince as though they neither understood nor hoped to understand. Gania was motionless with horror. Nastasia's arrival was a most unexpected and overwhelming event to all parties. In the first place, she had never been before. Up to now she had been so haughty that she had never even asked Gania to introduce her to his parents. Of late she had not so much as mentioned them. Gania was partly glad of this, but still he had put it to her debit in the account to be settled after marriage. He would have borne anything from her rather than this visit, but one thing seemed to him quite clear. Her visit now, and the present of her portrait on this particular day, pointed out plainly enough which way she intended to make her decision. The incredulous amazement with which all regarded the prince did not last long, for Nastassya herself appeared at the door and passed in, pushing by the prince again. "At last I've stormed the citadel! Why do you tie up your bell?" she said merrily, as she pressed Gania's hand, the latter having rushed up to her as soon as she made her appearance. "What are you looking so upset about? Introduce me, please." The bewildered Gania introduced her first to Varia, and both women, before shaking hands, exchanged looks of strange import. Nastassya, however, smiled amiably, but Varia did not try to look amiable, and kept her gloomy expression. She did not even vouchsafe the usual courteous smile of etiquette. Gania darted a terrible glance of wrath at her for this, but Nina Alexandrovna mended matters a little when Gania introduced her at last. Hardly, however, had the old lady begun about her highly gratified feelings, and so on, when Nastassya left her and flounced into a chair by Gania's side in the corner by the window, and cried, "Where's your study? And where are the lodgers? You do take in lodgers, don't you?" Gania looked dreadfully put out, and tried to say something in reply, but Nastassya interrupted him. "Why, where are you going to squeeze lodgers in here? Don't you use a study? Does this sort of thing pay?" she added, turning to Nina Alexandrovna. "Well, it is troublesome, rather," said the latter, "but I suppose it will pay pretty well. We have only just begun, however." Again Nastassya Filippovna did not hear the sentence out. She glanced at Gania and cried, laughing, "Ah, what a face! My goodness, what a face you have on at this moment!" Indeed, Gania did not look in the least like himself. His bewilderment and his alarmed perplexity passed off, however, and his lips now twitched with rage as he continued to stare evilly at his laughing guest, while his countenance became absolutely livid. There was another witness who, though standing at the door motionless and bewildered himself, still managed to remark Gania's death-like pallor and the dreadful change that had come over his face. This witness was the prince, who now advanced in alarm and muttered to Gania, "Drink some water, and don't look like that." It was clear that he came out with these words quite spontaneously, on the spur of the moment, but his speech was productive of much, for it appeared that all Gania's rage now overflowed upon the prince. He seized him by the shoulder and gazed with an intensity of loathing and revenge at him, but said nothing, as though his feelings were too strong to permit of words. General agitation prevailed. Nina Alexandrovna gave a little cry of anxiety. Ptitsin took a step forward in alarm. Colia and Ferdishenko stood stock still at the door in amazement. Only Varia remained coolly watching the scene from under her eyelashes. She did not sit down, but stood by her mother with folded hands. However, Gania recollected himself almost immediately. He let go of the prince and burst out laughing. "Why, are you a doctor, prince, or what?" he asked as naturally as possible. "I declare you quite frightened me. Nastassya Filippovna, let me introduce this interesting character to you, though I have only known him myself since the morning." Nastasia gazed at the prince in bewilderment. Prince? He a prince? Why, I took him for the footman just now, and sent him in to announce me. Ha, 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 ha! Isn't that good? "Not bad, that, not bad at all," put in Ferdishenko. "Se non è vero. I rather think I pitched into you too, didn't I? Forgive me, do. Who is he, did you say? What prince? Myshkin," she added, addressing Gania. "He is a lodger of ours," explained the latter. "An idiot." The prince distinctly heard the word half whispered from behind him. This was Ferdishenko's voluntary information for Nastasia's benefit. "Tell me, why didn't you put me right when I made such a dreadful mistake just now?" continued the latter, examining the prince from head to foot without the slightest ceremony. She awaited the answer as though convinced that it would be so foolish that she must inevitably fail to restrain her laughter over it. "I was astonished, seeing you so suddenly," murmured the prince. "How did you know who I was? Where had you seen me before? And why were you so struck dumb at the sight of me? What was there so overwhelming about me?" "Oh, ho, ho, ho!" cried Ferdishenko. "Now then, prince, my word, what things I would say if I had such a chance as that! My goodness, prince, go on." "So should I in your place, I've no doubt," laughed the prince to Ferdishenko, then continued, addressing Nastasia. "Your portrait struck me very forcibly this morning. Then I was talking about you to the Epanchins, and then in the train, before I reached Petersburg, Parfen Rogojin told me a good deal about you, and at the very moment that I opened the door to you, I happened to be thinking of you, when there you stood before me." "And how did you recognize me?" "From the portrait." "What else?" "I seemed to imagine you exactly as you are. I seemed to have seen you somewhere." "Where? Where?" "I seem to have seen your eyes somewhere. But it cannot be. I have not seen you. I never was here before. I may have dreamed of you, I don't know." The prince said all this with manifest effort, in broken sentences, and with many drawings of breath. He was evidently much agitated. Nastassya Filippovna looked at him inquisitively, but did not laugh. "Bravo, prince!" cried Ferdishenko, delighted. At this moment a loud voice from behind the group which hedged in the prince and Nastassya Filippovna divided the crowd, as it were, and before them stood the head of the family, General Ivolgin. He was dressed in evening clothes, his moustache was dyed. This apparition was too much for Gania. Vain and ambitious almost to morbidness, he had had much to put up with in the last 2 months, and was seeking feverishly for some means of enabling himself to lead a more presentable kind of existence. At home he now adopted an attitude of absolute cynicism. But he could not keep this up before Nastassya Filippovna, although he had sworn to make her pay after marriage for all he suffered now. He was experiencing a last humiliation, the bitterest of all at this moment, the humiliation of blushing for his own kindred in his own house. A question flashed through his mind as to whether the game was really worth the candle. For that had happened at this moment which for 2 months had been his nightmare, which had filled his soul with dread and shame: the meeting between his father and Nastassya Filippovna. He had often tried to imagine such an event, but had found the picture too mortifying and exasperating, and had quietly dropped it. Very likely he anticipated far worse things than was at all necessary. It is often so with vain persons. He had long since determined, therefore, to get his father out of the way, anywhere, before his marriage, in order to avoid such a meeting. But when Nastassya entered the room just now, he had been so overwhelmed with astonishment that he had not thought of his father, and had made no arrangements to keep him out of the way. And now it was too late. There he was, and got up too in a dress coat and white tie, and Nastassya in the very humour to heap ridicule on him and his family circle. Of this last fact he felt quite persuaded. What else had she come for? There were his mother and his sister sitting before her, and she seemed to have forgotten their very existence already. And if she behaved like that, he thought, she must have some object in view. Ferdishenko led the general up to Nastassya Filippovna. "Ardalion Alexandrovitch Ivolgin," said the smiling general with a low bow of great dignity. "An old soldier, unfortunate, and the father of this family. But happy in the hope of including in that family so exquisite—" He did not finish his sentence, for at this moment Ferdishenko pushed a chair up from behind, and the general, not very firm on his legs, at this post-prandial hour, flopped into it backwards. It was always a difficult thing to put this warrior to confusion, and his sudden descent left him as composed as before. He had sat down just opposite to Nastassya, whose fingers he now took, and raised to his lips with great elegance and much courtesy. The general had once belonged to a very select circle of society, but he had been turned out of it 2 or 3 years since on account of certain weaknesses, in which he now indulged with all the less restraint. But his good manners remained with him to this day, in spite of all. Nastassya Filippovna seemed delighted at the appearance of this latest arrival, of whom she had of course heard a good deal by report. "I have heard that my son—" began Ardalion Alexandrovitch. "Your son, indeed! A nice papa you are! You might have come to see me anyhow, without compromising anyone. Do you hide yourself, or does your son hide you?" "The children of the 19th century and their parents—" began the general again. "Nastassya Filippovna, will you excuse the general for a moment? Someone is inquiring for him," said Nina Alexandrovna in a loud voice, interrupting the conversation. "Excuse him? Oh no! I have wished to see him too long for that. Why, what business can he have? He has retired, hasn't he? You won't leave me, General, will you?" "I give you my word that he shall come and see you, but he needs rest just now." "General, they say you require rest," said Nastassya Filippovna, with the melancholy face of a child whose toy is taken away. Ardalion Alexandrovitch immediately did his best to make his foolish position a great deal worse. "My dear, my dear," he said solemnly and reproachfully, looking at his wife, with one hand on his heart. "Won't you leave the room, mamma?" asked Varia aloud. "No, Varia, I shall sit it out to the end." Nastassya must have heard both question and reply, but her vivacity was not in the least damped. On the contrary, it seemed to increase. She immediately overwhelmed the general once more with questions, and within 5 minutes that gentleman was as happy as a king, and holding forth at the top of his voice, amid the laughter of almost all who heard him. Colia jogged the prince's arm. "Can't you get him out of the room somehow? Do, please!" And tears of annoyance stood in the boy's eyes. "Curse that Gania!" he muttered between his teeth. "Oh yes, I knew General Epanchin well," General Ivolgin was saying at this moment. "He and Prince Nikolai Ivanovitch Myshkin, whose son I have this day embraced after an absence of 20 years, and I were 3 inseparables. Alas, one is in the grave, torn to pieces by calumnies and bullets. Another is now before you, still battling with calumnies and bullets." "Bullets?" cried Nastassya. "Yes, here in my chest. I received them at the siege of Kars, and I feel them in bad weather now. And as to the third of our trio, Epanchin, of course, after that little affair with the poodle in the railway carriage, it was all up between us." "Poodle? What was that? And in a railway carriage? Dear me," said Nastassya thoughtfully, as though trying to recall something to mind. "Oh, just a silly little occurrence, not really worth telling, about Princess Bielokonski's governess, Miss Smith. And, oh, it is really not worth telling." "No, no, we must have it," cried Nastassya merrily. "Yes, of course," cried Ferdishenko. "C'est du nouveau." "Ardalion," said Nina Alexandrovitch entreatingly. "Papa, you are wanted!" cried Colia. "Well, it is a silly little story, in a few words," began the delighted general. "A couple of years ago, soon after the new railway was opened, I had to go somewhere or other on business. Well, I took a first-class ticket, sat down and began to smoke, or rather continued to smoke, for I had lighted up before. I was alone in the carriage. Smoking is not allowed, but is not prohibited either. It is half allowed, so to speak, winked at. I had the window open. Suddenly, just before the whistle, in came 2 ladies with a little poodle, and sat down opposite to me. Not bad-looking women. One was in light blue, the other in black silk. The poodle, a beauty with a silver collar, lay on light blue's knee. They looked haughtily about, and talked English together. I took no notice, just went on smoking. I observed that the ladies were getting angry, over my cigar, doubtless. One looked at me through her tortoise-shell eyeglass. I took no notice, because they never said a word. If they didn't like the cigar, why couldn't they say so? Not a word, not a hint. Suddenly, and without the very slightest suspicion of warning, light blue seizes my cigar from between my fingers, and whew, out of the window with it. Well, on flew the train, and I sat bewildered. And the young woman, tall and fair, and rather red in the face, too red, glared at me with flashing eyes. I didn't say a word, but with extreme courtesy, I may say with the most refined courtesy, I reached my finger and thumb over towards the poodle, took it up delicately by the nape of the neck, and chucked it out of the window after the cigar. The train went flying on, and the poodle's yells were lost in the distance. "Oh, you naughty man!" cried Nastassya, laughing and clapping her hands like a child. "Bravo!" said Ferdishenko. Ptitsin laughed too, though he had been very sorry to see the general appear. Even Colia laughed and said, "Bravo!" "And I was right, truly right," cried the general with warmth and solemnity, "for if cigars are forbidden in railway carriages, poodles are much more so." "Well, and what did the lady do?" asked Nastasia impatiently. "That's where all the mischief of it lies," replied Ivolgin, frowning. "Without a word, as it were, of warning, she slapped me on the cheek. An extraordinary woman." "And you?" The general dropped his eyes and elevated his brows, shrugged his shoulders, tightened his lips, spread his hands, and remained silent. At last he blurted out: "I lost my head." "Did you hit her?" "No, oh no! There was a great flare-up, but I didn't hit her. I had to struggle a little, purely to defend myself, but the very devil was in the business. It turned out that Light Blue was an Englishwoman, governess or something, at Princess Bielokonski's, and the other woman was one of the old maid princesses Bielokonsky. Well, everybody knows what great friends the princess and Mrs. Epanchin are, so there was a pretty kettle of fish. All the Bielokonskis went into mourning for the poodle. 6 princesses in tears, and the Englishwoman shrieking. Of course I wrote an apology and called, but they would not receive either me or my apology, and the Epanchins cut me too." "But wait," said Nastasia. "How is it that 5 or 6 days since I read exactly the same story in the paper as happening between a Frenchman and an English girl? The cigar was snatched away exactly as you describe, and the poodle was chucked out of the window after it. The slapping came off too, as in your case, and the girl's dress was light blue." The general blushed dreadfully. Colia blushed too, and Ptitsin turned hastily away. Ferdishenko was the only one who laughed as gaily as before. As to Gania, I need not say that he was miserable. He stood dumb and wretched, and took no notice of anybody. "I assure you," said the general, "that exactly the same thing happened to myself." "I remembered there was some quarrel between father and Miss Smith, the Bielokonski's governess," said Colia. "How very curious! Point for point the same anecdote, and happening at different ends of Europe. Even the light blue dress the same," continued the pitiless Nastasia. "I must really send you the paper." "You must observe," insisted the general, "that my experience was 2 years earlier." "Ah, that's it, no doubt." Nastassya Filippovna laughed hysterically. "Father, will you hear a word from me outside?" said Gania, his voice shaking with agitation, as he seized his father by the shoulder. His eyes shone with a blaze of hatred. At this moment there was a terrific bang at the front door, almost enough to break it down. Some most unusual visitor must have arrived. Colia ran to open. End of Part 1, Chapter 9. Recording by Martin Geeson in Hazelmere, Surrey. Part 1, Chapter 10 of The Idiot. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Eva M. Martin. Part 1, Chapter 10. The entrance hall suddenly became full of noise and people. To judge from the sounds which penetrated to the drawing-room, a number of people had already come in, and the stampede continued. Several voices were talking and shouting at once. Others were talking and shouting on the stairs outside. It was evidently a most extraordinary visit that was about to take place. Everyone exchanged startled glances. Gania rushed out towards the dining-room, but a number of men had already made their way in, and met him. "Ah, here he is, the Judas!" cried a voice which the prince recognized at once. "How d'ye do, Gania, you old blackguard?" "Yes, that's the man," said another voice. There was no room for doubt in the prince's mind. One of the voices was Rogojin's, and the other Lebedeff's. Gania stood at the door like a block and looked on in silence, putting no obstacle in the way of their entrance, and 10 or a dozen men marched in behind Parfen Rogojin. They were a decidedly mixed-looking collection, and some of them came in their furs and caps. None of them were quite drunk, but all appeared to be considerably excited. They seemed to need each other's support, morally, before they dared come in. Not one of them would have entered alone, but with the rest each one was brave enough. Even Rogojin entered rather cautiously at the head of his troop, but he was evidently preoccupied. He appeared to be gloomy and morose, and had clearly come with some end in view. All the rest were merely chorus brought in to support the chief character. Besides Lebedeff, there was the dandy Zalesheff, who came in with his coat and hat. 2 or 3 others followed his example. The rest were more uncouth. They included a couple of young merchants, a man in a greatcoat, a medical student, a little Pole, a small fat man who laughed continuously, and an enormously tall, stout one who apparently put great faith in the strength of his fists. A couple of ladies of some sort put their heads in at the front door, but did not dare come any farther. Colia promptly banged the door in their faces and locked it. "Hallo, Gania, you blackguard! You didn't expect Rogojin, eh?" said the latter, entering the drawing-room and stopping before Gania. But at this moment he saw seated before him Nastassya Filippovna. He had not dreamed of meeting her here, evidently, for her appearance produced a marvellous effect upon him. He grew pale, and his lips became actually blue. "I suppose it is true, then," he muttered to himself, and his face took on an expression of despair. "So that's the end of it. Now you, sir, will you answer me or not?" he went on suddenly, gazing at Gania with ineffable malice. "Now then, you—" He panted and could hardly speak for agitation. He advanced into the room mechanically, but perceiving Nina Alexandrovna and Varia, he became more or less embarrassed in spite of his excitement. His followers entered after him, and all paused a moment at sight of the ladies. Of course their modesty was not fated to be long-lived, but for a moment they were abashed. Once let them begin to shout, however, and nothing on earth should disconcert them. "What, you here too, prince?" said Rogojin absently, but a little surprised all the same. "Still in your gaiters, eh?" He sighed, and forgot the prince the next moment, and his wild eyes wandered over to Nastasia again, as though attracted in that direction by some magnetic force. Nastasia looked at the new arrivals with great curiosity. Gania recollected himself at last. "Excuse me, sirs," he said loudly, "but what does all this mean?" He glared at the advancing crowd generally, but addressed his remarks especially to their captain, Rogojin. "You are not in a stable, gentlemen, though you may think it. My mother and sister are present." "Yes, I see your mother and sister," muttered Rogojin through his teeth, and Lebedeff seemed to feel himself called upon to second the statement. "At all events, I must request you to step into the salon," said Gania, his rage rising quite out of proportion to his words, "and then I shall inquire—" "What, he doesn't know me?" said Rogojin, showing his teeth disagreeably. "He doesn't recognize Rogojin." He did not move an inch, however. I have met you somewhere, I believe, but... Met me somewhere? Pooh! Why, it's only 3 months since I lost 200 roubles of my father's money to you at cards. The old fellow died before he found out. Ptitsin knows all about it. Why, I've only to pull out a 3-rouble note and show it to you, and you'd crawl on your hands and knees to the other end of the town for it. That's the sort of man you are. Why, I've come now at this moment to buy you up. Oh, you needn't think that because I wear these boots I have no money. I have lots of money, my beauty. Enough to buy up you and all yours together. So I shall if I like to. I'll buy you up. I will!" he yelled, apparently growing more and more intoxicated and excited. "Oh, Nastassya Filippovna, don't turn me out. Say one word, do. Are you going to marry this man or not?" Rogojin asked his question like a lost soul appealing to some divinity, with the reckless daring of one appointed to die, who has nothing to lose. He awaited the reply in deadly anxiety. Nastassya Filippovna gazed at him with a haughty, ironical expression of face. But when she glanced at Nina Alexandrovna and Varia, and from them to Gania, she changed her tone all of a sudden. "Certainly not. What are you thinking of? What could have induced you to ask such a question?" she replied quietly and seriously, and even, apparently, with some astonishment. "No? No?" shouted Rogojin, almost out of his mind with joy. "You are not going to, after all? And they told me. Oh, Nastassya Filippovna, they said you had promised to marry him. Him! As if you could do it. Him! Pooh! I don't mind saying it to everyone. I'd buy him off for 100 roubles any day. Pooh! Give him 1,000 or 3 if he likes, poor devil. And he'd cut and run the day before his wedding, and leave his bride to me. Wouldn't you, Gania, you blackguard? You'd take 3,000, wouldn't you? Here's the money, look, I've come on purpose to pay you off and get your receipt, formally. I said I'd buy you up, and so I will." "Get out of this, you drunken beast!" cried Gania, who was red and white by turns. Rogojin's troop, who were only waiting for an excuse, set up a howl at this. Lebedeff stepped forward and whispered something in Parfen's ear. "You're right, clerk," said the latter. "You're right, tipsy spirit. You're right. Nastassya Filippovna," he added, looking at her like some lunatic, harmless generally, but suddenly wound up to a pitch of audacity. "Here are 18,000 roubles, and you shall have more." Here he threw a packet of banknotes tied up in white paper on the table before her, not daring to say all he wished to say. "No, no, no!" muttered Lebedeff, clutching at his arm. He was clearly aghast at the largeness of the sum, and thought a far smaller amount should have been tried first. "No, you fool! You don't know whom you are dealing with, and it appears I am a fool too," said Parfen, trembling beneath the flashing glance of Nastassya. "Oh, curse it all! What a fool I was to listen to you!" he added with profound melancholy. Nastassya Filippovna, observing his woebegone expression, suddenly burst out laughing. 18,000 roubles for me? Why, you declare yourself a fool at once," she said with impudent familiarity, as she rose from the sofa and prepared to go. Gania watched the whole scene with a sinking of the heart. 40,000 then! 40,000 roubles instead of 18. Ptitsin and another have promised to find me 40,000 roubles by 7 o'clock tonight. 40,000 roubles! Paid down on the nail. The scene was growing more and more disgraceful, But Nastassya Filippovna continued to laugh and did not go away. Nina Alexandrovna and Varia had both risen from their places and were waiting, in silent horror, to see what would happen. Varia's eyes were all ablaze with anger, but the scene had a different effect on Nina Alexandrovna. She paled and trembled, and looked more and more like fainting every moment. "Very well, then, 100,000. 100,000, paid this very day. Ptitsin, find it for me. A good share shall stick to your fingers. Come." "You are mad," said Ptitsin, coming up quickly and seizing him by the hand. "You're drunk. The police will be sent for if you don't look out. Think where you are." "Yes, he's boasting like a drunkard," added Nastasia, as though with the sole intention of goading him. "I do not boast. You shall have 100,000 this very day. Ptitsin, get the money, you gay usurer. Take what you like for it, but get it by the evening. I'll show that I'm in earnest," cried Rogojin, working himself up into a frenzy of excitement. "Come, come, what's all this?" cried General Ivolgin, suddenly and angrily coming close up to Rogojin. The unexpectedness of this sally on the part of the hitherto silent old man caused some laughter among the intruders. "Hullo! What's this now?" laughed Rogojin. "You come along with me, old fellow. You shall have as much to drink as you like." "Oh, it's too horrible!" cried Porkolia, sobbing with shame and annoyance. "Surely there must be someone among all of you here who will turn this shameless creature out of the room," cried Varia suddenly. She was shaking and trembling with rage. "That's me, I suppose. I'm the shameless creature," cried Nastassya Filippovna with amused indifference. "Dear me, and I came, like a fool as I am, to invite them over to my house for the evening. Look how your sister treats me, Gavrila Ardalionovitch." For some moments Gania stood as if stunned or struck by lightning after his sister's speech. But seeing that Nastassya Filippovna was really about to leave the room this time, he sprang at Varia and seized her by the arm like a madman. "What have you done?" he hissed, glaring at her as though he would like to annihilate her on the spot. He was quite beside himself and could hardly articulate his words for rage. "What have I done? Where are you dragging me to? Do you wish me to beg pardon of this creature because she has come here to insult our mother and disgrace the whole household, you low, base wretch?" cried Varia, looking back at her brother with proud defiance. A few moments passed as they stood there face to face, Gania still holding her wrist tightly. Varia struggled once, twice, to get free, then could restrain herself no longer, and spat in his face. "There's a girl for you!" cried Nastassya Filippovna. "Mr. Ptitsin, I congratulate you on your choice." Gania lost his head. Forgetful of everything, he aimed a blow at Varia, which would inevitably have laid her low, but suddenly another hand caught his. Between him and Varia stood the prince. "Enough! Enough!" said the latter with insistence, but all of a tremble with excitement. "Are you going to cross my path for ever, damn you?" cried Gania, and loosening his hold on Varia, he slapped the prince's face with all his force. Exclamations of horror arose on all sides. The prince grew pale as death. He gazed into Gania's eyes with a strange, wild, reproachful look. His lips trembled and vainly endeavoured to form some words. Then his mouth twisted into an incongruous smile. "Very well, never mind about me, but I shall not allow you to strike her," he said at last, quietly. Then suddenly he could bear it no longer. and covering his face with his hands, turned to the wall, and murmured in broken accents, "Oh, how ashamed you will be of this afterwards!" Gania certainly did look dreadfully abashed. Colia rushed up to comfort the prince, and after him crowded Varia, Rogojin and all, even the general. "It's nothing, it's nothing," said the prince, and again he wore the smile which was so inconsistent with the circumstances. "Yes, he will be ashamed," cried Rogojin. "You will be properly ashamed of yourself for having injured such a sheep." He could not find a better word. "Prince, my dear fellow, leave this and come away with me. I'll show you how Rogojin shows his affection for his friends." Nastassya Filippovna was also much impressed, both with Gania's action and with the prince's reply. Her usually thoughtful, pale face, which all this while had been so little in harmony with the jests and laughter which she had seemed to put on for the occasion, was now evidently agitated by new feelings, though she tried to conceal the fact, and to look as though she were as ready as ever for jesting and irony. "I really think I must have seen him somewhere," she murmured seriously enough. "Oh, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Aren't you ashamed? Are you really the sort of woman you are trying to represent yourself to be? Is it possible?" The prince was now addressing Nastasia in a tone of reproach, which evidently came from his very heart. Nastassya Filippovna looked surprised and smiled, but evidently concealed something beneath her smile, and with some confusion and a glance at Gania, she left the room. However, she had not reached the outer hall when she turned round, walked quickly up to Nina Alexandrovna, seized her hand and lifted it to her lips. "He guessed quite right. I am not that sort of woman," she whispered hurriedly, flushing red all over. Then she turned again and left the room so quickly that no one could imagine what she had come back for. All they saw was that she said something to Nina Alexandrovna in a hurried whisper, and seemed to kiss her hand. Varia, however, both saw and heard all, and watched Nastasia out of the room with an expression of wonder. Gania recollected himself in time to rush after her in order to show her out, but she had gone. He followed her to the stairs. "Don't come with me," she cried. "Au revoir till the evening. Do you hear? Au revoir." He returned thoughtful and confused. The riddle lay heavier than ever on his soul. He was troubled about the prince too, and so bewildered that he did not even observe Rogojin's rowdy band crowd past him and step on his toes at the door as they went out. They were all talking at once. Rogojin went ahead of the others, talking to Ptitsin, and apparently insisting vehemently upon something very important. "You've lost the game, Gania!" he cried as he passed the latter. Gania gazed after him uneasily, but said nothing. End of Part 1, Chapter 10. Recording by Martin Geeson in Hazelmere, Surrey. Part 1, Chapter 11 of The Idiot. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Eva M. Martin. Part 1, Chapter 11. The prince now left the room, and shut himself up in his own chamber. Colia followed him almost at once, anxious to do what he could to console him. The poor boy seemed to be already so attached to him that he could hardly leave him. "You were quite right to go away," he said. "The row will rage there worse than ever now. And it's like this every day with us, and all through that Nastassya Filippovna." "You have so many sources of trouble here, Colia," said the prince. "Yes, indeed, and it is all our own fault. But I have a great friend who is much worse off even than we are. Would you like to know him?" "Yes, very much. Is he one of your schoolfellows?" "Well, not exactly. I will tell you all about him some day. What do you think of Nastassya Filippovna? She is beautiful, isn't she? I had never seen her before, though I had a great wish to do so. She fascinated me. I could forgive Gania if he were to marry her for love, but for money... Oh dear, that is horrible." "Yes, your brother does not attract me much." "I am not surprised at that, after what you... But I do hate that way of looking at things. Because some fool or a rogue pretending to be a fool strikes a man, that man is to be dishonoured for his whole life, unless he wipes out the disgrace with blood, or makes his assailant beg forgiveness on his knees. I think that's so very absurd and tyrannical. Lermontov's bal masque is based on that idea, a stupid and unnatural one in my opinion, but he was hardly more than a child when he wrote it. I like your sister very much. Did you see how she spat in Gania's face? Varia is afraid of no one. But you did not follow her example, and yet I am sure it was not through cowardice. Here she comes. Speak of a wolf and you see his tail. I felt sure that she would come. She is very generous, though of course she has her faults." Varia pounced upon her brother. "This is not the place for you," said she. "Go to father. Is he plaguing you, prince?" "Not in the least. On the contrary, he interests me." "Scolding as usual, Varia. It's the worst thing about her. After all, I believe father may have started off with Rogojin. No doubt he is sorry now. Perhaps I had better go and see what he is doing," added Colia, running off. "Thank God I have got mother away, and put her to bed without another scene. Gania is worried and ashamed, not without reason. What a spectacle! I have come to thank you once more, prince, and to ask you if you knew Nastassya Filippovna before." "No, I have never known her." "Then what did you mean when you said straight out to her that she was not really like that? You guessed right, I fancy. It is quite possible she was not herself at the moment, though I cannot fathom her meaning. Evidently she meant to hurt and insult us. I have heard curious tales about her before now, but if she came to invite us to her house, why did she behave so to my mother? Ptitsin knows her very well. He says he could not understand her today. With Rogojin, too. No one with a spark of self-respect could have talked like that in the house of her... Mother is extremely vexed on your account, too." "That is nothing," said the prince, waving his hand. "But how meek she was when you spoke to her." "Meek? What do you mean?" "You told her it was a shame for her to behave so, and her manner changed at once. She was like another person. You have some influence over her, prince," added Varia, smiling a little. The door opened at this point, and in came Gania most unexpectedly. He was not in the least disconcerted to see Varia there, but he stood a moment at the door, and then approached the prince quietly. "Prince," he said with feeling, "I was a blackguard. Forgive me." His face gave evidence of suffering. The prince was considerably amazed, and did not reply at once. "Oh, come! Forgive me, forgive me!" Gania insisted rather impatiently. "If you like, I'll kiss your hand. There." The prince was touched. He took Gania's hands, and embraced him heartily, while each kissed the other. "I never thought you were like that," said Myshkin, drawing a deep breath. "I thought you weren't capable of—" "Of what? Apologizing, eh? And where on earth did I get the idea that you were an idiot? You always observe what other people pass by unnoticed. One could talk sense to you, but here is another to whom you should apologize," said the prince, pointing to Varia. No, they are all enemies. I've tried them often enough, believe me," and Gania turned his back on Varia with these words. "But if I beg you to make it up?" said Varia. "And you'll go to Nastassya Filippovna's this evening?" "If you insist. But judge for yourself. Can I go? Ought I to go?" "But she is not that sort of woman, I tell you," said Gania angrily. "She was only acting." I know that, but what a part to play! And think what she must take you for, Gania. I know she kissed mother's hand and all that, but she laughed at you all the same. All that is not good enough for 75,000 roubles, my dear boy. You are capable of honourable feelings still, and that's why I am talking to you so. Oh, do take care what you are doing. Don't you know yourself that it will end badly, Gania?" So saying, and in a state of violent agitation, Varia left the room. "There, they are all like that," said Gania, laughing. "Just as if I do not know all about it much better than they do." He sat down with these words, evidently intending to prolong his visit. "If you know it so well," said the prince a little timidly, "why do you choose all this worry for the sake of the 75,000, which you confess does not cover it?" "I didn't mean that," said Gania, "but while we are upon the subject, let me hear your opinion. Is all this worry worth 75,000 or not?" "Certainly not." "Of course, and it would be a disgrace to marry so, "A great disgrace." "Oh, well, then you may know that I shall certainly do it now. I shall certainly marry her. I was not quite sure of myself before, but now I am." "Don't say a word. I know what you want to tell me." "No, I was only going to say that what surprises me most of all is your extraordinary confidence." "How so? What in?" "That Nastassya Filippovna will accept you, and that the question is as good as settled. And secondly, that even if she did, you would be able to pocket the money. Of course, I know very little about it, but that's my view. When a man marries for money, it often happens that the wife keeps the money in her own hands." "Of course you don't know all, but I assure you, you needn't be afraid, it won't be like that in our case." "There are circumstances," said Gania, rather excitedly. "And as to her answer to me, there's no doubt about that. Why should you suppose she will refuse me?" "Oh, I only judge by what I see. Varvara Ardalionovna said just now—" "Oh, she! They don't know anything about it. Nastasia was only chaffing Rogojin. I was alarmed at first, but I have thought better of it now. She was simply laughing at him. She looks on me as a fool because I show that I want her money, and doesn't realize that there are other men who would deceive her in far worse fashion. I am not going to pretend anything, and you'll see she'll marry me all right. If she likes to live quietly, so she shall. But if she gives me any of her nonsense, I shall leave her at once. But I shall keep the money. I'm not going to look a fool. That's the first thing, not to look a fool." "But Nastassya Filippovna seems to me such a sensible woman. and as such, why should she run blindly into this business? That's what puzzles me so," said the prince. "You don't know all, you see. I tell you there are things, and besides, I'm sure she is persuaded that I love her to distraction. And I give you my word, I have a strong suspicion that she loves me too, in her own way, of course. She thinks she will be able to make a sort of slave of me all my life, but I shall prepare a little surprise for her. I don't know whether I ought to be confidential with you, prince, but I assure you, you are the only decent fellow I have come across. I have not spoken so sincerely as I am doing at this moment for years. There are uncommonly few honest people about, prince. There isn't one honester than Ptitsin. He's the best of the lot. Are you laughing? You don't know, perhaps, that blackguards like honest people. And being one myself, I like you. Why am I a blackguard? Tell me honestly now. They all call me a blackguard because of her, and I have got into the way of thinking myself one. That is what is so bad about the business." "I, for one, shall never think you a blackguard again," said the prince. "I confess I had a poor opinion of you at first, but I have been so joyfully surprised about you just now. It's a good lesson for me. I shall never judge again without a thorough trial. I see now that you are not only not a blackguard, but are not even quite spoiled. I see that you are quite an ordinary man, not original in the least degree, but rather weak." Gania laughed sarcastically, but said nothing. The prince, seeing that he did not quite like the last remark, blushed, and was silent too. "Has my father asked you for money?" asked Gania suddenly. "No." "Don't give it to him if he does. Fancy, he was a decent, respectable man once. He was received in the best society. He was not always the liar he is now. Of course wine is at the bottom of it all, but he is a good deal worse than an innocent liar now. Do you know that he keeps a mistress? I can't understand how mother is so long-suffering. Did he tell you the story of the siege of Kars? Or perhaps the one about his grey horse that talked? He loves to enlarge on these absurd histories." And Gania burst into a fit of laughter. Suddenly he turned to the prince and asked, "Why are you looking at me like that?" "I am surprised to see you laugh in that way, like a child. You came to make friends with me again just now, and you said, 'I will kiss your hand if you like,' just as a child would have said it. And then, all at once, you are talking of this mad project, of these 75,000 roubles. It all seems so absurd and impossible." "Well, what conclusion have you reached?" "That you are rushing madly into the undertaking, and that you would do well to think it over again. It is more than possible that Varvara Ardalionovna is right." "Ah, now you begin to moralize. I know that I am only a child, very well," replied Gania impatiently. "That is proved by my having this conversation with you. It is not for money only, prince, that I am rushing into this affair," he continued, hardly master of his words, so closely had his vanity been touched. "If I reckoned on that, I should certainly be deceived, for I am still too weak in mind and character. I am obeying a passion, an impulse perhaps, because I have but one aim, one that overmasters all else. You imagine that once I am in possession of these 75,000 roubles, I shall rush to buy a carriage. No, I shall go on wearing the old overcoat I have worn for 3 years, and I shall give up my club. I shall follow the example of men who have made their fortunes. When Ptitsin was 17, he slept in the street. He sold penknives, and began with a kopeck. Now he has 60,000 roubles, but to get them, what has he not done? Well, I shall be spared such a hard beginning, and shall start with a little capital. In 15 years people will say, 'Look, that's Ivolgin, the king of the Jews.' You say that I have no originality. Now mark this, prince. There is nothing so offensive to a man of our time and race than to be told that he is wanting in originality, that he is weak in character, has no particular talent, and is, in short, an ordinary person. You have not even done me the honour of looking upon me as a rogue. Do you know I could have knocked you down for that just now? You wounded me more cruelly than Epanchin, who thinks me capable of selling him my wife. Observe, it was a purely gratuitous idea on his part, seeing there has never been any discussion of it between us. This has exasperated me, and I am determined to make a fortune. I will do it. Once I am rich, I shall be a genius, an extremely original man. One of the vilest and most hateful things connected with money is that it can buy even talent, and will do so as long as the world lasts. You will say that this is childish or romantic. Well, that will be all the better for me, but the thing shall be done. I will carry it through. He laughs most who laughs last. Why does Epanchin insult me? Simply because, socially, I am a nobody. However, enough for the present. Colia has put his nose in to tell us dinner is ready twice. I'm dining out. I shall come and talk to you now and then. You shall be comfortable enough with us. They are sure to make you one of the family. I think you and I will either be great friends or enemies. Look here now, supposing I had kissed your hand just now, as I offered to do in all sincerity, should I have hated you for it afterwards? Certainly, but not always. You would not have been able to keep it up, and would have ended by forgiving me, said the prince, after a pause for reflection, and with a pleasant smile. Oh, how careful one has to be with you, prince! Haven't you put a drop of poison in that remark now, eh? By the way, I forgot to ask, was I right in believing that you were a good deal struck yourself with Nastassya Filippovna? Yes. Are you in love with her? No. And yet you flush up as red as a rosebud. Come, it's all right. I'm not going to laugh at you. Do you know she is a very virtuous woman? Believe it or not, as you like. You think she and Totski? Not a bit of it, not a bit of it. Not for ever so long. Au revoir. Gania left the room in great good humour. The prince stayed behind, and meditated alone for a few minutes. At length Colia popped his head in once more. "I don't want any dinner, thanks, Colia. I had too good a lunch at General Epanchin's." Colia came into the room and gave the prince a note. It was from the general, and was carefully sealed up. It was clear from Colia's face how painful it was to him to deliver the missive. The prince read it, rose, and took his hat. "It's only a couple of yards," said Colia, blushing. "He's sitting there over his bottle, and how they can give him credit I cannot understand. Don't tell mother I brought you the note, prince. I have sworn not to do it 1,000 times, but I'm always so sorry for him. Don't stand on ceremony. Give him some trifle and let that end it. Come along, Colia. I want to see your father. I have an idea," said the prince. End of Part 1, Chapter 11. Recording by Martin Geeson. Part 1, Chapter 12 of The Idiot. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Eva M. Martin. Part 1, Chapter 12. Kolya took the prince to a public house in the Litaynaya, not far off. In one of the side rooms there sat at a table, looking like one of the regular guests of the establishment, Ardalion Alexandrovitch, with a bottle before him, and a newspaper on his knee. He was waiting for the prince, and no sooner did the latter appear than he began a long harangue about something or other. But so far gone was he that the prince could hardly understand a word. "I have not got a 10-rouble note," said the prince, "but here is a 25. Change it and give me back the 15, or I shall be left without a farthing myself." "Oh, of course, of course. And you quite understand that I—" "Yes, and I have another request to make, General. Have you ever been at Nastassya Filippovna's?" "I? Do you mean me? Often, my friend, often. I only pretended I had not, in order to avoid a painful subject. You saw today, you were a witness, that I did all that a kind, an indulgent father could do. Now a father of altogether another type shall step into the scene. You shall see. The old soldier shall lay bare this intrigue, or a shameless woman will force her way into a respectable and noble family." "Yes, quite so. I wished to ask you whether you could show me the way to Nastassya Filippovna's tonight. I must go. I have business with her. I was not invited, but I was introduced. Anyhow, I am ready to trespass the laws of propriety, if only I can get in somehow or other." "My dear young friend, you have hit on my very idea. It was not for this rubbish I asked you to come over here." He pocketed the money, however, at this point. "It was to invite your alliance in the campaign against Nastassya Filippovna tonight. How well it sounds! General Ivolgin and Prince Myshkin. That'll fetch her, I think. Capital. We'll go at 9. There's time yet." "Where does she live?" "Oh, a long way off, near the great theatre, just in the square there. It won't be a large party." The general sat on and on. He had ordered a fresh bottle when the prince arrived. This took him an hour to drink, and then he had another, and another, during the consumption of which he told pretty nearly the whole story of his life. The prince was in despair. He felt that though he had but applied to this miserable old drunkard because he saw no other way of getting to Nastassya Filippovna's, yet he had been very wrong to put the slightest confidence in such a man. At last he rose and declared he would wait no longer. The general rose too, drank the last drops that he could squeeze out of the bottle, and staggered into the street. Myshkin began to despair. He could not imagine how he had been so foolish as to trust this man. He only wanted one thing, and that was to get to Nastassya Filippovna's, even at the cost of a certain amount of impropriety. But now the scandal threatened to be more than he had bargained for. By this time Ardalion Alexandrovitch was quite intoxicated, and he kept his companion listening while he discoursed eloquently and pathetically on subjects of all kinds, interspersed with torrents of recrimination against the members of his family. He insisted that all his troubles were caused by their bad conduct, and time alone would put an end to them. At last they reached the Litaynaya. The thaw increased steadily, a warm, unhealthy wind blew through the streets, vehicles splashed through the mud, and the iron shoes of horses and mules rang on the paving stones. Crowds of melancholy people plodded wearily along the footpaths, with here and there a drunken man among them. "Do you see those brightly lighted windows?" said the general. "Many of my old comrades in arms live about here, and I, who served longer and suffered more than any of them, am walking on foot to the house of a woman of rather questionable reputation. A man, look you, who has 13 bullets on his breast. You don't believe it? Well, I can assure you it was entirely on my account that Pirogov telegraphed to Paris and left Sevastopol at the greatest risk during the siege. Nelaton, the Tuileries surgeon, demanded a safe conduct in the name of science into the besieged city in order to attend my wounds. The government knows all about it. That's the Ivolgin with 13 bullets in him. That's how they speak of me. Do you see that house, prince? One of my old friends lives on the first floor, with his large family. In this and 5 other houses, 3 overlooking Nevsky, 2 in the Morskaya, are all that remain of my personal friends. Nina Alexandrovna gave them up long ago, but I keep in touch with them still. I may say I find refreshment in this little coterie, in thus meeting my old acquaintances and subordinates, who worship me still, in spite of all. General Sokolovitch, by the way, I have not called on him lately, or seen Anna Fyodorovna. You know, my dear prince, when a person does not receive company himself, he gives up going to other people's houses involuntarily. And yet... Well, you look as if you didn't believe me. Well now, why should I not present the son of my old friend and companion to this delightful family? General Ivolgin and Prince Myshkin. You will see a lovely girl. What am I saying, a lovely girl? No, indeed, 2, 3. Ornaments of this city and of society. Beauty, education, culture. The woman question. Poetry. Everything. Added to which is the fact that each one will have a dot of at least 80,000 roubles. No bad thing, eh? In a word, I absolutely must introduce you to them. It is a duty, an obligation. General Ivolgin and Prince Myshkin. Tableau. At once? Now? You must have forgotten, began the prince. No, I have forgotten nothing. Come, this is the house, up this magnificent staircase. I am surprised not to see the porter, but it is a holiday, and the man has gone off. Drunken fool! Why have they not got rid of him? Sokolovitch owes all the happiness he has had in the service and in his private life to me, and me alone. But here we are. The prince followed quietly, making no further objection for fear of irritating the old man. At the same time, he fervently hoped that General Sokolovitch and his family would fade away like a mirage in the desert, so that the visitors could escape by merely returning downstairs. But to his horror, he saw that General Ivolgin was quite familiar with the house and really seemed to have friends there. At every step he named some topographical or biographical detail that left nothing to be desired on the score of accuracy. When they arrived at last on the first floor, and the general turned to ring the bell to the right, the prince decided to run away. But a curious incident stopped him momentarily. "You have made a mistake, General," said he. "The name on the door is Koulakov, and you are going to see General Sokolovitch." Kulakov means nothing. This is Sokolovich's flat, and I am ringing at his door. What do I care for Kulakov? Here comes someone to open." In fact, the door opened directly, and the footman informed the visitors that the family were all away. "What a pity! What a pity! It's just my luck," repeated Ardalion Alexandrovitch over and over again, in regretful tones. "When your master and mistress return, my man, tell them that General Ivolgin and Prince Myshkin desired to present themselves, and that they were extremely sorry, excessively grieved." Just then another person belonging to the household was seen at the back of the hall. It was a woman of some 40 years, dressed in sombre colours, probably a housekeeper or a governess. Hearing the names, she came forward with a look of suspicion on her face. "Marie Alexandrovna is not at home," said she, staring hard at the general. "She has gone to her mother's, with Alexandra Mikhailovna." "Alexandra Mikhailovna out too? How disappointing! Would you believe it, I am always so unfortunate. May I most respectfully ask you to present my compliments to Alexandra Mikhailovna, and remind her, tell her that with my whole heart I wish for her what she wished for herself on Thursday evening, while she was listening to Chopin's ballade. She will remember. I wish it with all sincerity. General Ivolgin and Prince Myshkin." The woman's face changed. She lost her suspicious expression. "I will not fail to deliver your message," she replied, and bowed them out. As they went downstairs, the general regretted repeatedly that he had failed to introduce the prince to his friends. "You know, I am a bit of a poet," said he. "Have you noticed it? The poetic soul, you know." Then he added suddenly, "But after all, I believe we made a mistake this time. I remember that the Sokoloviches live in another house, and what is more, they are just now in Moscow. Yes, I was certainly at fault. However, it is of no consequence." "Just tell me," said the prince in reply, "may I count still on your assistance? Or shall I go on alone to see Nastassya Filippovna?" "Count on my assistance? Go alone? How can you ask me that question, when it is a matter on which the fate of my family so largely depends? You don't know Ivolgin, my friend. To trust Ivolgin is to trust a rock. That's how the first squadron I commanded spoke of me. 'Depend upon Ivolgin,' said they all. 'He is as steady as a rock.' But excuse me, I must just call at a house on our way, a house where I have found consolation and help in all my trials for years." "You are going home?" "No, I wish to visit Madame Terentieff, the widow of Captain Terentieff, my old subordinate and friend. She helps me to keep up my courage, and to bear the trials of my domestic life. And as I have an extra burden on my mind today—" "It seems to me," interrupted the prince, "that I was foolish to trouble you just now. However, at present you... Goodbye." "Indeed, you must not go away like that, young man. You must not," cried the general. "My friend here is a widow, the mother of a family. Her words come straight from her heart, and find an echo in mine. A visit to her is merely an affair of a few minutes. I am quite at home in her house. I will have a wash and dress, and then we can drive to the Grand Theatre. Make up your mind to spend the evening with me. We are just there. That's the house." "Why, Colia, you here? Well, is Marfa Borisovna at home, or have you only just come?"
"Oh no, I have been here a long while," replied Colia, who was at the front door when the general met him. "I am keeping Hippolyte company. He is worse, and has been in bed all day. I came down to buy some cards. Marfa Borisovna expects you. But what a state you are in, father," added the boy, noticing his father's unsteady gait. "Well, let us go in." On meeting Colia, the prince determined to accompany the general, though he made up his mind to stay as short a time as possible. He wanted Colia, but firmly resolved to leave the general behind. He could not forgive himself for being so simple as to imagine that Ivolgin would be of any use. The three climbed up the long staircase until they reached the 4th floor, where Madame Terentieff lived. "You intend to introduce the prince?" asked Colia as they went up.
"Yes, my boy, I wish to present him. General Ivolgin and Prince Myshkin. But what's the matter? What? How is Marfa Borisovna?"
"You know, father, you would have done much better not to come at all. She is ready to eat you up. You have not shown yourself since the day before yesterday, and she is expecting the money. Why did you promise her any? You are always the same. Well, now you will have to get out of it as best you can." They stopped before a somewhat low doorway on the 4th floor. Ardalion Alexandrovitch, evidently much out of countenance, pushed Myshkin in front.
"I will wait here," he stammered. "I should like to surprise her." Colia entered first, and as the door stood open, the mistress of the house peeped out. The surprise of the general's imagination fell very flat, for she at once began to address him in terms of reproach. Marfa Borisovna was about 40 years of age. She wore a dressing jacket, her feet were in slippers, her face painted, and her hair was in dozens of small plaits. No sooner did she catch sight of Ardalion Alexandrovitch than she screamed.
"There he is, that wicked, mean wretch! I knew it was he. My heart misgave me."
The old man tried to put a good face on the affair. "Come, let us go in. It's all right," he whispered in the prince's ear. But it was more serious than he wished to think. As soon as the visitors had crossed the low, dark hall and entered the narrow reception-room, furnished with half a dozen cane chairs and 2 small card-tables, Madame Terentieff, in the shrill tones habitual to her, continued her stream of invectives.
"Are you not ashamed? Are you not ashamed, you barbarian? You tyrant! You have robbed me of all I possessed. You have sucked my bones to the marrow. How long shall I be your victim? Shameless, dishonourable man!"
Marfa Borisovna, here is the Prince Myshkin." "General Ivolgin and Prince Myshkin," stammered the disconcerted old man.
"Would you believe," said the mistress of the house, suddenly addressing the prince, "would you believe that that man has not even spared my orphan children? He has stolen everything I possessed, sold everything, pawned everything. He has left me nothing, nothing. What am I to do with your IOUs, you cunning, unscrupulous rogue? Answer, devourer! Answer, heart of stone! How shall I feed my orphans? With what shall I nourish them? And now he has come, he is drunk. He can scarcely stand. How, oh, how have I offended the Almighty that he should bring this curse upon me? Answer, you worthless villain, answer!" But this was too much for the general. "Here are 25 roubles, Marfa Borisovna. It is all that I can give. And I owe even these to the prince's generosity, my noble friend. I have been cruelly deceived. Such is life. No, excuse me. I am very weak," he continued, standing in the centre of the room and bowing to all sides. "I am faint. Excuse me. Lenotchka, a cushion, my dear." Lenotchka, a little girl of 8, ran to fetch the cushion at once, and placed it on the rickety old sofa. The general meant to have said much more, but as soon as he had stretched himself out, he turned his face to the wall and slept the sleep of the just. With a grave and ceremonious air, Marfa Borisovna motioned the prince to a chair at one of the card-tables. She seated herself opposite, leaned her right cheek on her hand, and sat in silence, her eyes fixed on Myshkin, now and again sighing deeply. The 3 children, 2 little girls and a boy, Lenotchka being the eldest, came and leant on the table, and also stared steadily at him. Presently Colia appeared from the adjoining room. "I am very glad indeed to have met you here, Colia," said the prince. "Can you do something for me? I must see Nastassya Filippovna, and I asked Ardalion Alexandrovitch just now to take me to her house, but he has gone to sleep, as you see. Will you show me the way, for I do not know the street. I have the address, though. It is close to the Grand Theatre." "Nastassya Filippovna? She does not live there, and to tell you the truth, my father has never been to her house. It is strange that you should have depended on him. She lives near Vladimir Street at the 5 Corners, and it is quite close by. Will you go directly? It is just 9:30. I will show you the way with pleasure." Colia and the prince went off together. Alas, the latter had no money to pay for a cab, so they were obliged to walk. "I should have liked to have taken you to see Hippolyte," said Colia. "He is the eldest son of the lady you met just now, and was in the next room. He is ill, and has been in bed all day. But he is rather strange and extremely sensitive, and I thought he might be upset, considering the circumstances in which you came. Somehow it touches me less, as it concerns my father, while it is his mother. That of course makes a great difference. What is a terrible disgrace to a woman does not disgrace a man, at least not in the same way. Perhaps public opinion is wrong in condemning one sex and excusing the other. Hippolyte is an extremely clever boy, but so prejudiced. He is really a slave to his opinions." "Do you say he is consumptive?" "Yes. It really would be happier for him to die young. If I were in his place, I should certainly long for death. He is unhappy about his brother and sisters, the children you saw. If it were possible, if we only had a little money, we should leave our respective families and live together in an apartment of our own. It is our dream. But, do you know, when I was talking over your affair with him, he was angry, and said that anyone who did not call out a man who had given him a blow was a coward. He is very irritable today, and I left off arguing the matter with him. So Nastassya Filippovna has invited you to go and see her?" "To tell you the truth, she has not." "Then how do you come to be going there?" cried Colia, so much astonished that he stopped short in the middle of the pavement. And are you going to her at home in that costume?" "I don't know really whether I shall be allowed in at all. If she will receive me, so much the better. If not, the matter is ended. As to my clothes, what can I do?" "Are you going there for some particular reason, or only as a way of getting into her society and that of her friends?" "No, I have really an object in going. That is, I am going on business. It is difficult to explain, but—" "Well, whether you go on business or not is your affair. I do not want to know. The only important thing, in my eyes, is that you should not be going there simply for the pleasure of spending your evening in such company. Cocottes, generals, usurers. If that were the case, I should despise and laugh at you. There are terribly few honest people here, and hardly any whom one can respect, although people put on airs, Varia especially. Have you noticed, prince, how many adventurers there are nowadays? Especially here in our dear Russia. How it has happened I never can understand. There used to be a certain amount of solidity in all things, but now what happens? Everything is exposed to the public gaze, veils are thrown back, every wound is probed by careless fingers. We are forever present at an orgy of scandalous revelations. Parents blush when they remember their old-fashioned morality. At Moscow lately, a father was heard urging his son to stop at nothing, mind you, to get money. The press seized upon the story, of course, and now it is public property. Look at my father, the general. See what he is. And yet, I assure you, he is an honest man. Only, he drinks too much, and his morals are not all we could desire. Yes, that's true. I pity him, to tell the truth, but I dare not say so, because everybody would laugh at me. But I do pity him. And who are the really clever men, after all? Money grubbers, every one of them, from the first to the last. Hippolyte finds excuses for money lending, and says it is a necessity. He talks about the economic movement and the ebb and flow of capital. The devil knows what he means. It makes me angry to hear him talk so, but he is soured by his troubles. Just imagine, the general keeps his mother, but she lends him money. She lends it for a week or 10 days at very high interest. Isn't it disgusting? And then, you would hardly believe it, but my mother, Nina Alexandrovna, helps Hippolyte in all sorts of ways, sends him money and clothes. She even goes as far as helping the children, through Hippolyte, because their mother cares nothing about them. And Varia does the same. Well, just now you said there were no honest nor good people about, that there were only money grubbers. And yet they are quite close at hand, these honest and good people. Your mother and Varia. I think there is a good deal of moral strength in helping people in such circumstances. Varia does it from pride, and likes showing off, and giving herself airs. As to my mother, I really do admire her, yes, and honour her. Hippolyte, hardened as he is, feels it. He laughed at first, and thought it vulgar of her, but now he is sometimes quite touched and overcome by her kindness. You call that being strong and good? I will remember that. Gania knows nothing about it. He would say it was encouraging vice. Ah, Gania knows nothing about it. It seems there are many things that Gania does not know, exclaimed the prince, as he considered Kolya's last words. Do you know, I like you very much indeed, prince. I shall never forget about this afternoon. I like you too, Kolya. Listen to me. You are going to live here, are you not? Said Kolya. I mean to get something to do directly and earn money. Then shall we three live together? You and I and Hippolyte. We will hire a flat, and let the general come and visit us. What do you say?" "It would be very pleasant," returned the prince. "But we must see. I am really rather worried just now. What, are we there already? Is that the house? What a long flight of steps! And there's a porter. Well, Colia, I don't know what will come of it all." The prince seemed quite distracted for the moment. "You must tell me all about it tomorrow. Don't be afraid. I wish you success. We agree so entirely that I can do so, although I do not understand why you are here." "Goodbye," cried Colia excitedly. "Now I will rush back and tell Hippolyte all about our plans and proposals. But as to your getting in, don't be in the least afraid. You will see her. She is so original about everything. It's the first floor. The porter will show you." End of Part 1, Chapter 12. Recording by Martin Geeson in Hazelmere, Surrey.